Άδικον εστί. Οι οφθαλμοί μου πεσεύουσι. Τι λαμβάνει η χώρα?
Τι σκόρακαν παιδεύεις?
Τι γίνεται?
Alright, I'm here. This is, we're in Greece right now. Let's see exactly where we are at. Let's go to the map. So we are in Corinthia. Okay, I don't know anything about Corinthia, to be honest with you guys. But that's where we at. We're gonna learn the life of a Greek woman. And there was something interesting that I read. It said Greek men were required to marry between the ages of 25 and 35, and those who didn't were penalized. So something like that. I'm just seeing how the socialization could make people do things, right? It's not a free will thing. You could say, oh yeah, you know, they have the free will to reject the law and take the penalty, but you know, there's forces against them that's influencing them to make a different decision. So the will isn't so free. There's forces that play a role. Alright, learn what daily life was like for ancient Greek women. So we got 6 stations, it's going to take us about 13 minutes.
Welcome to Corinth, Wanderer. I have a special visit planned for you today. It's an intimate, informative look into the daily lives of Greek women. It's amazing what women could accomplish while men spend all day trying to out-debate each other at assembly meetings. Their work should be far more appreciated on the whole, but we're going to acknowledge that now.
I already know where this is going.
Corinth was one of the largest cities in ancient Greece. It had an estimated population of 90,000 in my times, and much of that population was made up of women. This tour will shine a light on those women and look at how they lived on a day-to-day basis. Look for me when you're done with your visit, and we can discuss things further.
She look crazy. Dang, she bumping into people and... Yo, you good? These people are dark, man. They made these people so dark. And you know what? I forget what's the name of that civilization. Is it the Minoans? They're depicted very dark skin as well, especially for Europeans.
Young girls growing up in ancient Greek cities were usually raised by a nurse. They mostly stayed in the women's quarters of the house, the gunaikon, where they spent their time spinning threads and weaving. While there is not much historical evidence of young girls at play, especially compared to boys, it was still known to happen. For example, an ancient terracotta group depicts 2 girls playing ephedrismos. This was a competition to see who could strike an upright rock from afar using a pebble or ball. The game's loser had to close their eyes and carry the victor until they managed to touch the same rock with their hands.
Alright, so we got a red figure led Gamikos used in marriage ceremonies with scenes showing preparation for a wedding. This is the year 420 BCE. Alright, so she's preparing for her marriage. Okay. Preparations for a wedding, 420. This was in the metro. Let me share this. Alright, so it's estimated that the area that would eventually be known as Corinth was inhabited as early as the Neolithic period around 6500 BCE. 6500. During the classical period, Corinth was a rival to both Athens and Thebes. Wow. Because of its control of the Isthmus of Corinth. However, under Alexander the Great and his successors, Corinth, along with many other Greek cities, lost its autonomy. Okay. In 146 BCE, Romans under the command of Lucius Mummius besieged Corinth. Mummius killed all the male inhabitants. Wow. Damn. And sold the women and children into slavery, then burned the city down. Oof. Oof. The Romans built a new city in Corinth's place in 44 BCE, which they later made the provincial capital of Greece. Damn. Damn. Did them dirty. Whoa. Killed all the males, women and children, slavery.
For a young Greek woman, marriage was the culmination of their induction into society. The average life expectancy for women was about 40 years. So most marriages took place when the bride was 14 or 15 years old. The marriage did not require her consent either. Instead, she was passed on from the protection of her father to that of her husband. Married women were not technically citizens at the time and lacked the rights that came with official citizenship.
Yeah, that could be oppressive, for
they did
sure.
receive a dowry that only they were allowed to spend. But in the event of a failed marriage, the dowry was returned to the bride's father. After the marriage was consummated, the woman's status changed from being a maiden to a bride. She remained a bride until the birth of her first child, wherein she officially became a woman.
Okay. Okay. That was interesting. So we got a father, mother, and their child, 450, 400 BCE time, classical Greece. So this is family. A male citizen's parents usually lived in his house, along with his wife and children. Okay. However, ancient households in Athens and Corinth were normally not composed of extensive families. Okay. So they had... Okay, this is... Let me see. I'm not really surprised by much that I'm reading. Alright, children, terracotta doll, child's toy, 5th century BCE. 5th century. After a baby was born, it was presented to its father, who would then decide its fate. Wow, that's crazy. If the child was a girl or showed signs of disability, they were occasionally abandoned and left to die. Damn. That's tough. Wealthier families could hire caretakers and employ their slaves as nurses to look after their children. This was a necessary precaution, as children were very susceptible to diseases and illnesses. Education in Greece was reserved for boys and young men. Rich families could hire tutors to teach their daughters skills like reading, but this was not the norm, and girls were mainly taught how to run the household. Alright. That's kind of similar to what we see in, I think, maybe pre-Islamic Arabian society as well, maybe some African societies as well.
Women living in ancient Greek cities were essentially forbidden from participating in political life, and most aspects of their lives were controlled by men. Their most important responsibilities were running the household and giving birth to children, preferably boys. Most of the time, women's excursions outside of the house were limited to visiting other female neighbors, as per custom. The few exceptions to this strict rule were weddings, funerals, and religious festivals involving women in prominent public roles.
Alright, so they were not really involved with the politics. I'm not surprised by that either, to be real.
Women living in...
Alright, let's skip that. Alright, here we go. Woman and possibly her daughter doing the laundry. 470, 460 BCE, classical Greece. Very traditional. Ancient Greek men dedicated most of their time to public life, debates and things like that, and politics, but Greek home life was dominated by women. An Athenian or Corinthian wife was in charge of the household and divided her time between spinning, weaving, and sewing family garments. Meanwhile, duties like food preparation and child rearing were usually performed by women slaves. Alright. However, if a family was too poor to afford many slaves, the wife took on these responsibilities. Alright.
Greek cities were essentially forbidden from participating in political life. And most of their few exceptions.
We already heard that. So that was part 3. We got 3 more parts.
Making textiles was the main occupation of most Greek women. It was a woman's responsibility to manufacture clothing for each of her family members, as well as to weave other household textiles. Women with exceptional weaving skills were believed to make excellent wives, and weaving in general was seen as a very attractive quality. For example, Homer describes Odysseus's devoted wife Penelope as spending most of her days weaving at the loom. Similarly, many Greek vases depicting women weaving were combined with images of a woman holding a veil, which was seen as the symbol of a bride.
Okay. So now we got women working at a loom seen from a black figure, Likitos, however you say that, Likitos, 550 to 530 BCE, archaic Greece. Alright. Some evidence of ancient weaving activities come from an archaic black figure, terracotta, like Likitos, which means vessel. The vessel depicts women weighing wool, spinning, working an upright loom, and folding finished garments. Besides weaving, another daily activity in ancient Greece was fetching water from the local fountain house. This activity gave women the opportunity to socialize outside of their homes. Alright, this is interesting. Women were also responsible for visiting the tombs of family members. Typically, they brought offerings and tied sashes around the grave steles. Women could attend public speeches and visit certain sanctuaries, but only if they were accompanied by men. That's also in Islamic culture. I forget what they call it, but they need like a male, I forget what it's called, like witness, sometimes to go with them to certain places, basically to monitor her activities.
Ancient Greek women cooked in their house's kitchen area. However, since their cooking equipment was small and portable, they also sometimes prepared meals in the central courtyard. This was also where women performed other domestic activities. These activities were rarely seen by visiting men or passers-by, because the architecture of classical Greek houses facilitated the social norm that women should never be seen at work.
So I'm seeing something with the word mahram for the Islamic concept. It is not permissible for a woman who believes in Allah on the last day to make a journey of one day and night unless she is accompanied by a mahram, which could be a husband or a family member. Figurines of a butcher and a cook, 525 to 475 BCE, archaic Greece. Many Greek art depictions of women preparing food suggest that cooking was occasionally done in the courtyard, where they enjoyed fresh air. However, women mostly cooked in kitchen complexes located at the back at the back at the back of the house, where they would not be seen by others. I'll be catching typos and everything in these games, man. Alright, we got one more. Let's see what they got. This is definitely a eye-opening chapter. Many ways.
The historian Strabo
never mind.
relays that the Temple of Aphrodite was one of Corinth's most famous landmarks. This was largely due to the temple's female patrons. These hetairai, as they were called, were donated to the goddess by both men and women. According to Strabo, the Temple of Aphrodite contributed greatly to Corinth's wealth.
Okay.
The hetairai were the temple's main attraction, and many visitors came to Corinth in search of their company, for which they spent frequently and frivolously.
Where were they, the hetairai? What the hell? Hetaira in the Temple of Aphrodite in Corinth, concept art, 2016. In Athens, the legendary lawmaker Solon was credited with creating state brothels. Whoa. With regulated prices. Brothels employed men and women of all ages and were visited by a predominantly male clientele. Wow. How do people feel about that? I feel like America is kind of going in that direction in a way, to be real. Alright, where's the tour guide at?
Ancient Greek women cooked. These
Alright, we already did that one. Alright, tour guide's over here. We're gonna have to take a quiz.
Hello again, Wanderer. I hope your visit was an interesting one. Greek women lived very restricted lives compared to men, but throughout it all, they held on to their strength and dignity. Is there anything else you'd like to do?
Yeah, let's take that quiz.
Feeling up for a test? Excellent.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's begin with an easier question. What was the name of the women's quarters in a Greek home?
Oh, the name of a women's quarters in a Greek home. Alright, it's not this one. It could be the andron. These gyne words are tricky because that gyne ties to like gynecology. But I'm gonna go with the andron.
The andron was actually the men's section of the house where they held their symbosia. Try another answer.
Alright, now I know what the men's was. It was the andron for the men's. I'm gonna say the gynecon.
Correct. The gynekon was where young girls spent their days weaving and spinning threads. On to the next question. The Corinthian temple said to employ the Hetera was dedicated to which
Hetera.
god?
Alright, Aphrodite.
Correct. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and passion, so it's only fitting her temple served such an amorous purpose. We're almost done. Just one more question. What was the name of Odysseus' wife?
Damn, I'm gonna say it's probably Penelope, huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
Penelope was Odysseus' loyal wife, who kept at her weaving while waiting for her husband to return from war. You passed the test, Wanderer.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Again, man. 3
Then
for 4.
farewell, Wanderer, and thank you for visiting this great place.
We still rocking, man. We still locked in. We still locked in. Let's get it. What else can we get into? Music, theater. We did politics and philosophy. We completed that. Damn. We could go into wine, bronze, perfume. Alright, what's the shortest one? Because I ain't trying to be here too long. Visit the island of Thasos and learn about ancient winemaking techniques. I'm not really interested in that. Alright, yeah, I'm about to jump on this WWE, so. Oh, you know what? Pottery. That's gonna be the next one I do right there. It's gonna be the pottery. It's gonna move the character to the scene. We gotta look into the downfall of the Greeks. Let me talk to the AI real quick. When the ancient Greek society began to fall, and I think it was the Romans that sacked them. What was happening socially in ancient Greece? Damn, it didn't hear me.
I got your question. You're asking about the social conditions in ancient.
Whoa. What the fuck? Alright, I gotta do this again. Hold on. I don't know what just happened. It spazzed out. The AI glitched on me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How can I assist you today?
Alright. Tell me about the social conditions in ancient Greece at the time of their fall to the Romans, if it was the Romans.
The social conditions in ancient Greece, particularly around the time of the Roman conquest, were complex. Greek society was hierarchical. At the top were free citizens with political rights. Below them were foreigners called metics, and slaves in Sparta, there were helots, who were a type of state slave. Women mainly focused on domestic tasks and managing households, while slaves often handled labor. Greek city-states were fragmented, and internal conflicts made them vulnerable to Roman conquest. When Rome intervened, particularly during conflicts like the Pyrrhic War and the Achaean War, Greece fell under Roman control by around 146 BC. The Roman conquest led to the fragmentation of Greece city-states, and local governance often fell to Roman hands. Social unrest was common due to economic disparities and heavy taxation. After the conquest, many educated Greeks were enslaved or employed in the Roman administration. The Romans often declared the freedom of the Greeks, but in reality, they established provinces such as Achaea and Epirus under Roman rule. Would you like more details or clarification on any part of this?
Nope, that was good. That was a good overview right there. Let's get this intro. Damn, dude, watch out.
Hello, Wanderer. May I introduce you to the Keramikos, the kiln that warms all of Athens' pottery.
Yep.
The art produced here is some of the most beautiful in the Greek world. I envy the potter's skills, though I'm not quite as envious of their clay-stained hands. It's bad for the nails.
Alright.
The Keramikos was a special neighborhood in Athens, where
Keramikos.
potters created vases and containers that stood all over Greece. This tour will take you through the elaborate process needed to turn something as simple as muddy clay into ornate perfume vases and gilded wine cups. Come find me when you complete your visit, and we can talk more about what you've learned.
Yeah, I gotta switch this character, because this girl, she looks so perplexed, confused, and just... Yeah, this Athenian woman excels at weaving, longs to get out of the house more often. Really? Really? Still got a lot to unlock. I'll be this woman for now. She's the poetess. I like the music.
The Kerameikos was a large, sprawling area northwest of Athens' Acropolis. While part of it was used as a graveyard, it was also dedicated to the creation of pottery. The Kerameikos was so significant to the art form that its name lives on in the word ceramics. Perhaps drawn by the river, potters moved into the area and formed their own bustling community. It's believed that by the end of the 5th century BCE, hundreds of thousands of pottery vessels had been made in Athens, including everything from heavy, undecorated cooking pots to delicate and beautiful containers reserved for the most precious oils. Sadly, only around 1% of these works survive today, some only in small fragments.
Pinax was seen of a potter's workshop, 625 to 600 BCE, archaic Greece. Alright, we're going to get into that. See what we could get out of that. Alright. Pottery retrospective. Unfortunately, no ancient manuals for making pottery have survived to the present day. There is only limited visual and textual evidence to explain how ceramic works were created. However, the vases themselves provide a few clues. Some pots were decorated with behind-the-scenes glimpses at potters and painters at work. These visual narratives, along with the texts of ancient authors, suggest that pottery making was a family affair, with fathers teaching their sons the craft at a young age. One vase even shows a woman working as a painter, which again suggests that pottery making was a family business. Okay. Family affair. I like that. That's dope. The whole family.
Raw clay from a river was hardly fit for a potter's wheel. Athenian potters used clay that was rich in iron, which created the distinctive orange-red coloring seen in Athenian pottery. But this high-quality clay needed to be handled carefully to avoid disasters in the kiln later on. The clay was first brought to settling beds, where it was mixed with water to wash out any organic debris like leaves. Once it was purified, workers kneaded the clay with their hands to push out air bubbles and create the texture necessary for a flawless finish. One of the goals of these early steps was to remove any impurities that could destroy a delicate design, or worse, render a vase unusable.
Alright. Miners extracting clay seen from a votive Pinax 570 BCE. While we describe Athenian vases as painted, their red and black designs weren't actually the result of paint, but of a special preparation of the clay itself, known as a slip. Levigated slips were named after a process in which water was used to help refine the finest particles of clay from the coarser, heavier ones, leaving a solution that was equal parts water and clay. Different clays with different mineral compositions offered a palette of options for pottery makers. For example, white clays were used to add light highlights in black and red figure scenes. Okay. Slips were also a key element of vase construction and were used to help attach segments of larger vases together and to help anchor elements like handles to the body of the vessel. Alright, so a slip is a special preparation. Okay. Parts, different clays. Alright. Oh, actually, let me get a close-up look. Alright. Yeah, that's dope. Those vases are dope. She cleaning. Alright. Gotta respect the craftsmanship. Gotta respect it.
Once the clay was cleaned, it was up to the potter to shape it into a vase by spinning it on a wheel or pressing it into a mold. Their choice depended on what shape they wanted for the vase, but they also considered the possible scope of its decoration. Potters did not work alone. A workshop might have had many people working together on different aspects of production. Potters collaborated with many different painters for decorating their creations. Some of these painters even became potters themselves. All in all, a single vase could be worked on by many different artists, with each one focusing on a different aspect of its design.
Terracotta head, Cantharos. Wow, this is dope. With 2 female heads. That's tough right there. That's tough. They was turning up on that right there. That's tough. That right there is tough. That right there, that's tough. Terracotta head Cantharos with 2 female heads, attributed to the Brygos painter, 490 to 480 BCE, classical Greece. Vases often had inscriptions known as whatever that says, poiettes, or signatures that identified the workshop or owner responsible for the overall production of the vase. Okay. Sometimes a vase named both its potter and its painter. Most Athenian potters and painters remain anonymous, but over the years, scholars have identified the specific styles of hundreds of individual artists and workshops, even though their names have been lost. Okay. These identifications have been achieved by examining different qualities of the vases, such as the placement of relief lines, sketch designs, and even the shapes of painted eyes and noses. Yeah, this is tough. Gotta respect that. That's tough right there. Let me get a clear picture. Tough. Very tough. These long loading screens.
After the pots were shaped and decorated, they were packed into kilns for the lengthy and delicate firing process. The process had 3 stages: oxidation, reduction, and reoxidation. The main purpose of the firing process was to carefully manage the clay's exposure to oxygen. The chemical reactions caused by firing gave the pots their distinctive orange-red coloring. This also turned the designs made from the clay decoration slips glossy and black. The most difficult part of the firing process was managing the fires themselves. It required an enormous amount of skill and experience to properly judge the exact temperatures needed, and even the smallest mistake could ruin several hours of work.
Alright, so we got an example of a misfired black figure cup, 480, 470 BCE, classical Greece. Alright, experimental archaeological projects and scientific advancements have changed the way researchers understand the ancient firing process. For example, instead of firing a single cycle, it's possible some pottery workshops fired vases twice or even more. While discarded shards, misfires, and damaged or unfinished vases may seem like mistakes, they actually offer new clues as to how ancient Greek pottery workshops function. Alright, let's check out what this dude is up to. Alright, get to work. Yep, get that work done. You too, get to work, man. What did he say? Alright, let's see what he's up to right here. Alright, I'm not... Where are the women doing the pottery? Did it say women don't do pottery? I thought they said it was a family affair. Okay, he's painting. Alright, he's painting. What they doing? Alright, they prepping it up over here. Alright, everybody working. Everybody, yup. Look, even the chicken.
Vases could be decorated in all sorts of ways. Before 530 BCE, Athenian vases were decorated using the black figure technique, where figures and designs were painted as dark silhouettes. At the end of the 6th century BCE, painters created a new technique called red figure, an inversion of the painting process that left the figures in red and the background in black. This gave the artist more freedom to better explore details like muscles and individual locks of hair. Designs were sketched onto the bare surface of the pot using a thin, sharp tool. Thin relief lines, which helped define subtle elements like facial features, were added using a brush made of a few stiff hairs. More elaborate vases were sometimes gilded, but these decorations were so delicate, they were most likely only added after the firing process.
Black figure Ope with scene of introduction of Heracles to Olympus, or Olympos, with the signature of the potter Amasis made me, 550 to 530 BCE. Okay, look like we got some warriors here. Designs were not... Damn, look at that owl right there. That owl is tough. Alright, designs were not painted onto vases in the same way we view painting today. Athenian vase painters used a kind of slip, a mixture of clay and water, that became a glaze when the vase was fired. Different dilutions and concentrations allowed artists to adjust qualities like color and opacity for even finer designs. I gotta see this process. Athens, what can we put? Athens, clay making. Athenian, clay making, and art process. Dang, that was it.
You've returned. As you can see, pottery was an arduous and delicate process, but was exemplary of the skill and craftsmanship that dominated Greek art and culture. Now, is there something else you'd like to do? Then let's get right to it.
Yeah, let's do the
Starting
quiz.
with an easy question. What was responsible for the orange-red color of
Come
most
on, man.
Athenian vases?
The fire. Wait, what? Not leaves, not blood. Is it paint?
Paint was not the main source of the
Come on,
vases.
man.
Try again. Correct. Athenian potters worked with clay that was rich with
That's what I
iron,
meant. The clay,
and that
it's
iron
not paint,
created
whatever.
a distinctive
Same.
orange-red coloring. On to the next question.
Alright.
What were the chambers for firing pottery called?
I do not remember. It's not bonfires. Damn.
A frigetron is a special tool for roasting barley.
Sheesh.
Correct. Pottery was fired in kilns, and the firing process was extremely precise and delicate in nature. You're almost done. Just
Alright.
one more question. The firing process was made up of how many stages?
Damn. Don't even know.
No, it was much too complicated to be relegated.
Damn.
The firing process was not made up of No, that's too many.
Oh, wow. Come on.
Got You know you're...
Damn, I did terrible on that one. Hey, that's it.
Then we must part ways, at least for now. Farewell, wanderer.
Hey, it is what it is. We completed another tour. I mean, you know, some thought-provoking stuff. That's it, though. That's the last one. When I come back, maybe I'll go into some of the famous cities to learn about Delphi, Athens, the gods of Olympia. Yeah, we're gonna get into the famous cities. I think that'll be interesting.